For everyone else, why don't we take a moment and close our eyes and sit comfortably but alert. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you can have a straight spine but feel relaxed, breathing in through your nose, down into your belly, long, long exhale. In through the nose, down into the belly, long, long exhale. And as we do this breath to get settled and centered today, I'm going to invite you to consider the exchange that happens when we breathe. Drawing in life force, maybe pausing a moment to consider the way that breath brings oxygen and other elements into your lungs, into your blood, from your blood into your brain and all throughout your body, and then respirating, breathing out, exhaling elements we no longer need, out the very breath that our plants and trees will absorb and consume. And so even our breath is a kind of communication, drawing in from life, receiving from life, giving back to life, and pausing just for a moment to notice it all. And while your eyes are closed and you're feeling centered and getting centered, I thought I would start with a blessing, an invocation by Stephanie Kaza, the founder of Green Gulch Farms. And this invocation affirms our intercommunication with all life. We feel by the moon. We move by the stars. We live in all things. All things live in us. We eat from the earth. We drink from the rain. We breathe of the air. We live in all things. All things live in us. We call to each other. We listen to each other. Our hearts deepen with love and compassion. We live in all things. All things live in us. We depend on the trees and animals. We depend on the earth. Our minds open with wisdom and insight. We live in all things. All things live in us. We dedicate our practice to others. We include all forms of life. We celebrate the joy of living and dying. We live in all things. All things live in us. We are full of life. We are full of death. We are grateful for all beings and companions. Amen. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the room. And it's interesting. I guess we've thrown a curveball to some people because speaking of communication, I was hoping to communicate more by having the Zoom, but we are significantly lower in numbers, possibly as a result. On the other hand, I guess that's okay by me. This is going to be recorded, and so people can watch it on Zoom as well. I thought it might be nice, since we are doing this differently, if we can actually hear from our group. before I start, you know, with actual communication. Imagine that. So what I have on my screen right now is I have Joni and Kate and Flippy and iPhone and Mimi and Barbara and Nancy. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to kind of just go a little bit around the rotation as I see folks. And maybe you could just say hi to the group, you know, very briefly let us know how things have been for you, and then if there's anything special that's on your mind around communication. And it's okay if there's not. There's a lot to cover, but we're going to try to make it efficient just because we're online and we don't know how this is going for people. So how you been? If there's something special that you'd like to hear about relating to communication, and of course, you know, if there's anything else you want to add, it's welcome. So, oh, it's bouncing around. It's bouncing around. Mimi, how would you like to start? I'm attempting to unmute you. Are you unmuting? There you go. All right. So, Mimi, if you want to say hi to the group, little update.
Group. It's great to see you all. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
You know, I'm up and down all the time, and it depends on what day and what hour and what minute and what I'm doing with my time and when was the last time I read the news or watched the news or yeah, just one day blends into the next, and the time is moving so quickly, yet it's standing still, and just being present with it all. And I love being able to do this, and Jonathan, to see your daily and, you know, everything that you're offering. I was blown away in the beginning at wondering how many clones there are of you do all that.
3.
3 clones. Okay.
All right. And is there anything special you'd like to hear about today on the theme of communication, or more just along for the ride?
I can't think of anything right offhand, but if I do, I'll let you know.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, the way my screen is now moving, Joni, you got yourself in the hot seat. So a little greeting and an update and anything you want to hear about. And we're unmuting you.
There we go.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. I love this. And I'm doing great today. Not every day is so awesome, but let's see, 4 or 5 days ago, I got stung multiple times by a hornet, and I finally went to urgent care, and my hand is now like maybe less than twice the size of normal. So I'm really happy and feeling much better. And I'm just happy to step outside again. For like 3 days, I didn't. I was just too afraid to be like out in the elements. And that was really freaking me out. So it's just good now. And as far as the theme for today, I just wanted to throw in the maybe the other piece to it, which is the importance of active listening.
Yes, very much. Here we go. I'm making notes. Very much a part of the conversation. But let's talk more about that. Cool. So next up. let's see, is Kate. You're next. Can you? You're trying to unmute you. Trying to unmute you 1 sec. There you go. All right.
All right, I did it. Well, hello, everyone. So good to be able to do this, Jonathan. This is wonderful that we're doing a Zoom. As far as communication, how I'm doing. Well, it's a long story, it seems like, because it seems like it's been so long since we've been in this, stay at home. I live in a building with 5 other units, and half of them are younger people who think they're immune to this
Yeah.
pandemic. They don't social distance, they don't wear masks, and there's 2 of us that are older, that are over 60, that live here. And so I've just tried to kind of keep to myself, not get too close to them, and so on and so forth. But after a while, it's so easy to kind of just not get as concerned about it as we were in the beginning. I find
Yeah.
myself even forgetting my mask. Now, when I go to a grocery store, that's not the case, but when I'm around the building, I'm more relaxed about it. And being alone has been really challenging. And so that now with that, getting easier. And seeing David, there's obviously we're staying apart, we're not touching each other, we're just getting walks here. And it's all right. It really makes me your having physical touch at all. I just challenging. I just, I
So, Kate,
who have a mate and they're together, like Jonathan, your wife and kids.
Kate, 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 can you hear me? Kate? So can anybody else hear?
Yeah.
Kate, we've lost you. You're frozen and we can't hear you.
Did you mute me? How about now? No?
No, Kate, I was muting you because I was trying to get you to hear me. You completely froze and we missed about a minute of what you were saying. I'm sorry. You got to the part about, you got through talking about the masks and being in your apartment and being a little more relaxed there, but then you just stopped. Are you hearing me now? Yeah. So I'm so sorry. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you and you're quite slow. But we can see you doing this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We don't know, we're just trying our best. So if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. And I think we have to move on. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're unmuted, but I can't. There's nothing. You're, um, maybe we can try again later, if that's okay. I did hear the word touch and partners, so we're going to talk about that. But you're basically frozen. I'm so sorry. Barbara's next on my screen, and you are now unmuted. I'm very sorry for any technical difficulties and how that might shut anyone down. It's not purposeful. So Barbara, let's see if we can hear you.
I hope so. Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
I'm great, and things just seem kind of the same as they are in usual times, because I'm pretty much doing all the kinds of things that I do anyway with my spiritual communities, and I spend a lot of time on my inner work, so I can do that here, which is where I've always done pretty much. And I get out and go hiking and walking, and well, life is great. So as to communication, I'm just thinking about, I'd like to explore more, the communication that we're thinking of between people, among people. But I have been myself working on communicating with subtle realms and with the divine. So that's, I'd like to hear the other. So thanks.
All right, I think I got that. You were cutting it just a little bit at the end, but I did understand what you were saying. Communicating really not just with people, but with the spirit world or the spiritual world, however you.
That's what I'm doing, but I'm most interested today, if there's even time after we all go through saying hello. I'd like to, can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
just listening.
Okay, I'd like to talk more about communicating with each other.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Very good. All right. So we still have a bunch more to go. So we'll keep it tight so that we can squeeze in everything by 11:50, which is usually when this ends, the online version. Next, we have Nancy Ruff. So we were just asking for people to say hello to the group, quick update how you're doing, and then if there's something in the topic of communication you're interested in hearing about. So just a little chance to get your voice in the circle.
I'm actually doing well. I've always kind of liked little alternate realities. I mean, like when there's bad weather or things like that. I always kind of relish a little bit in a shift of energy. So like there hasn't been hardly any airplanes go by because I'm not that far. In a way, the airport kind of goes. Planes go over my house a little bit. So the quiet is kind of going away. Noise is coming back a little bit more. I don't feel super afraid. Overall, I don't have a lot of fear, but I do, of course, do the masking and all of that. My sister and I are doing bike rides and working in the yard. And truth be told, it reminds me in many ways of growing up, because I grew up in a very small community. There wasn't anything to do, So it has a familiar feeling of going back in time in this very odd way. But it's nice. It's really, for me, it's nice. Now, communication, as far as the world goes, the world's crazy. The way that we communicate and obsess around communication and all of that just is like, we're such an activated culture. And we don't, in my opinion, there's always agenda. It's hard for us to talk. It seems like on the mass media stuff without an underlying agenda, which is tiresome. But it's also the way we are. It's not just them. It's in lots of spaces and places. So I miss getting together with people and seeing people, because of course you get so much information in that way. But I am also fascinated with, I mean, I didn't realize this was going to be Zoom today, but I did some other things on Zoom, and I'm just fascinated with this, with how I would look back and remember Zoom. I remember how odd it was and how odd it felt, and yet, it's a lot better than it's a gift to all of us for this time. Yes.
Cool. I made some notes. Thank you. I'm making notes from everyone, and we're going to keep going. Well said. So Flippy, again, we're going to keep it short as possible. How you doing? Hi to the group, and anything you want to hear about communication.
All right. Hello, community. I had a breakdown on Tuesday. He's going to up one of my meds, but it hasn't been phoned in yet. But my support network showed up in a big way Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. People spent the night with me and stuff like that. But I'm bouncing back, and I went to the park yesterday. Everything's contemplation, digital detox today, except for this particular group. And I am going to go live on Facebook at 2. But I was wondering about communicating with spirit, during meditation, prayer meditation, and spirit's answer.
Great. I'll put it down. We're going to cover 100 topics in 10 minutes. All right. Thank you. And I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm sorry to hear you went through that, but I'm glad you're doing better. And then Lawrence, Judy, same thing. Greet the group. How you doing? And any topics in communication, short and sweet.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see everyone. I haven't taken a shower for 2 days. I didn't know it was Zoom, but here I am.
Looking lovely.
I'm doing well. I'm in transition. I'm living with a friend, as you can see up here in Indian Hills. So beautiful, but it's weird because I feel like I'm homeless again in a way. But I just really keep my heart open to all possibilities and kind of an emotional ride, looking for a house and all. But it's interesting because I moved my daughter, I moved myself, dug up a garden, planting a garden, doing this garden here. I haven't had a lot of time like to do my meditation. I really miss it. And so I want to really try to just take that time to, in terms of communication, just doing that inner work and communicating with yourself. I did have some, I don't know how many of you guys know, but my dad died March 9th. And I was with him for about 2 months, taking care of him. And he came to visit me twice. And so when you talk about communication with spirit, it was, oh man, that's just like so lovely. And I was very happy about that. So I missed the beginning because I came in late. So that's all I guess I have to say. And just send prayers for my perfect house, please.
Understood. Thank you. And we will add some notes to the list. Lawrence, we can't see you, but we can hear you. Would you like to say hello to the group? Quick update on how you are and if there's anything specifically you'd like to hear about?
Hello, group. Can you hear me?
We can. I can.
Okay, awesome. So I didn't know we were Zooming today, so I didn't schedule the hair, makeup, and wardrobe.
Fair enough.
So, Judy, condolences on your father's passing. Communication. Gosh, sometimes being in close quarters with the ones that you love, sometimes the other ways of communicating other than speech are really important. Just being present to the other person. We are in quarantine, so it's important to be kind to that person that you're in quarantine with.
Yeah. Nicely said. Anything else? That's actually a wonderful contribution. I made a few notes. We can expand on that. You
I'm
good?
complete. I'm
Great.
complete.
Great. It was nice to hear your voice and have you with us. And then Susan, there's something here called iPhone, and I don't know if that is you. It's hard to unmute.
Hi, Jonathan. It's Janice Badmoccasin.
Oh my gosh, Janice! Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Speaking of communicating,
Right?
to everyone else here from Althea, this is an old friend, Janice. Gosh, we've probably known each other 20 years, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to say to greet the group, or just let
Yeah.
people know how you are, or if there's something you want to hear about?
Yeah. I'll just say hello to everybody. I'm from Minnesota here, Shakopee, Minnesota. And I'm a intergenerational caregiver and guardian parent to my 79-year-old mother and a 15-year-old teen. So that really puts me in the middle of, different ages of communication to keep them safe and peace, guard them from all the fear on they watch news and they look on Facebook, so I'm always searching to provide them, like compassionate care, to settle them from fear, because my mom doesn't sleep at night sometimes. The COVID has reached my reservation in South Dakota, so I've had a lot of anxiety about that. So, and Jonathan, you know me, I'm dedicated to my traditions of being grounded. But without a sweat lodge and without any ceremony this summer, I'm just really missing social connection. So the best I'm doing is, as Jean would say, is be the ceremony. So that's very challenging in the home. But so I'm really digging deep to meditate and do some spiritual listening. So I'm on here to just hear more about what you have to share with us today.
Cool. Thank you. It's great to hear from you. I'm going to mute you now.
Okay.
Thank you, Janice. And then Trisha just popped in online. So Trisha, we don't have a ton of time left for me to share on communication, but we're focusing on letting people communicate, which is really, I think, under the circumstance, as important as hearing ideas about it. So with that in mind, could you take just a quick minute and say hello to the group, let us know how you're doing, and is there any specific topic in communication you want to hear about? And then we'll just sort of dive in for a quick, 15-minute exploration.
Well, hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're clear. You're super clear.
I'm kind of new to this, so I don't know exactly how it works. But sorry I'm late. I didn't know it was on Zoom, so I had to mess around to figure out how to get onto the Zoom thing. Communication. I have found during this time that, in fact, I just got back from a long walk and sat by the creek and talked to a woman with her son. And, for probably half an hour, that communication for me in those kind of situations is very healing, and it makes it feel like the difficulties are out there somewhere, not part of where I am, because she had her son was 2. She's due to have another baby in a month, and we were just sitting in the sun. It was it's a pleasure to be reminded of that stuff. So I don't know if I have any questions, because I just appeared.
Okay. All right.
out of nowhere. So I'm glad I like the Zoom thing a lot. So it's weird, but I like it. So
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to mute you and thank you very much
Okay.
for being here. So, some of you know I do on my own Facebook page at 12 o'clock a message every day. And I've been doing that for over 2 months. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about communication. I just decided that. So I'll have about 15 minutes now to respond to some of the comments and questions. And, and I really want to affirm, it's interesting because one of the things I did want to talk about today, we have already demonstrated. And so I'm going to touch on this now. I'm going to revisit this in greater depth at 12 in a separate stream. And then we're going to get into your questions. But the thing that I've really found interesting over the years is that we are always whole people. And if you think about it, in so many healing traditions, we think about ourselves as having, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual aspects. And of course, this is also something that, this particular symbol we associate with Native American tradition, but all kinds of holistic healers around the world consider the human being to be an integrated whole, that you can't just treat the mind or just treat the body or just treat the emotions. Flippy, even as you talked about, your own world being rocked and then needing to go to the hospital, and you kind of in a second gave people an example of how it's all connected. There might be a chemical out of balance, and then that affects mood, and that affects thought, and then that affects how we physically feel. So my point is, we're all always whole. And yet in the topic of communication, we can use these four elements to understand that we're not always communicating from the same place or about the same thing. So let me really quickly do this again. I'm going to do this at 12. My point is that sometimes, and Lawrence, I think, touched on this, sometimes we need to get clear for ourselves, am I communicating physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually right now? What is my intent? Is it a physical intent, a mental intent, an emotional intent, or a spiritual intent? Clarifying which of these four intentions you have actually then shapes how you use the same four parts of yourself as the communication. So let me clarify with some examples. If what you need to communicate is, we need more peanut butter, or have you checked your taxes, right? I consider those very physical things. Or you're standing on my foot, I guess that would be really physical as well. Then it's really not just okay, but it's actually pretty important to simplify the communication right down to the facts. To not add too much emotional color. Now, tone, language, those are physical things. Those are important. So be kind. But what complicates things in physical communication, meaning just real factual, technical communication, is to bring emotion in when it's not necessary. And I'm really great at that. So as a Canadian, ooh, I'm sorry to ask, but I hate to bother you. Do you think, oh, what is it? Well, I just, there's no peanut butter now, but there was peanut butter. And I'm not saying you ate the peanut butter, but like that takes something simple like, I think we need more peanut butter, and turns it into something it's not. Get that? Now, in a similar way, sometimes we want to communicate emotionally, but then we intellectualize it, or we pretend it's a fact. You're always ignoring me. You're not present. See, those are, as you know from nonviolent communication, those are taking things that we want to communicate emotionally. I feel like you're not listening to me. I feel scared when you do this. I feel unheard. And suddenly we try to use mental language, physical language, and then it gets messy. The last example I'll give you is when we want to just talk about ideas. Typically, when people are sorting out mental versus emotional, they'll call it masculine versus feminine. And we do this in my home. So sometimes when my wife and I sit down to talk, I mean, and we actually do this, we will say, look, I just need to get this off my chest. I just need to feel this. I just need to say this. That's the cue. Don't go into your mental. I don't want to hear ideas. I don't want to hear facts. So what would that sound like if it didn't go well? It might sound like, you know, I'm feeling really scared about what high school will be like for our daughter when I think about these kinds of things. Will she never have a normal life again? That's just an emotional feeling. It's pretty irrational. That's not going to happen for like 10, 15 years. If my wife responds with, well, you know, I think you worry too much. And the simple fact is that if you look at statistics, pandemics are usually, you know, year-long cycles. And if you consider the rate of formulating vaccines and testing them, I mean, at the least, you know, we have 2 years or, you know, to go. And there's no reason why you should apply such an extreme conclusion when the medical facts are that probably this will be treatable. I mean, that's not what I want to hear, right? I'm just sharing from my heart. I'm just expressing that I'm in fear. So the point being that if you want to be understood, you can also take responsibility. Where am I really coming from? And what is it I really want the other person to know? And you can name it. You can advocate for yourself. I just want to explore this idea with you. That means let's be mental together. Let's just talk. I just need to we just need to accomplish something, or we need, you know, I want to make sure we're clear. Let's get something done. That's physical. I need some time to express what I'm feeling. That's emotional. Now, when we talk about spiritual, the interesting thing for me, and I think Janice kind of touched on this, spiritual communication is actually, in my experience, typically less about words. Spiritual communication is typically, it's more feeling, it's more poetic, it's more presence, it's more ceremony, and it's more about sharing in something together. I think it's less about telling someone something, controlling someone's thoughts or experiences. Having said all that, we've got about 10 things people were interested in hearing more about or talking about, and about 10 minutes to do it. So let's try. I'm not going to do them in any order, in a very logical order, because we're just going to make the most of the time we have. The first one, and some of them are pretty short. The first one was just Joni mentioned the importance of listening. And I have to say, as a principle of communication, I think listening is probably the most important, along with intentionality. Intentionality means know which aspect of self you're coming from so that it can be received well and you can match how you share with what you're sharing. But even if it's just we need more peanut butter or you need to take your meds, listening is always, always going to open the field of energy and connection between the two. Listening is the heart of spiritual connection and communication. And when people know, when they sense, when they feel they're being listened to, whatever else follows, whatever else is a part of the dialogue, is better received. Interestingly, I've learned over the years with great difficulty, because obviously I'm a talker and this is all, you know, talk all day here. But in my relationships, I've really learned that it's almost always more important to listen than to be heard. If it's about me being heard, then I realize it's typically not communication. It's not two-way. I want you to hear my ideas. I want you to do what I want you to do. I want you to validate my feelings. That's not really communication. That's me trying to manipulate the world to get what I want. Now, that's normal. No hard feelings. I'm just saying that if I can't bring listening into it, then I know I got to slow down and see what's really going on. Deep listening, being patient, whether it's with partners that were at a distance, I could hear that, Kate, or Lauren's partner that you're enmeshed with, or Janice, someone in your family you're caring for, to provide that space that they feel that you're really hearing them, even if what they're saying doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just important on an emotional and spiritual level. Now, the next thing that came up, someone mentioned touch. I think that was Kate, actually. And, you know, that's a challenging one right now, right? Because we can't touch. And so the only two things that I want to say that might be important is, one, this is such an important time to not only recognize how we can expand our consciousness through the limits of isolation, but it's also an important time to really reflect on the things we've taken for granted in our lives. You know, the way we simply interact with someone in a store, the meaning of touching someone on a shoulder, or being up close, or sitting side by side and feeling that energy. So what I'll say is, yes, touch is one of those great emotional and spiritual tools of communication. And when it's removed, may we truly remember this so that we cherish it as we go forward. Another element that came up in people's early sharing, I guess this was my interpretation, actually came out when Barbara was talking about just wanting to hear more about communicating between people, which we're definitely doing. But less is more. I think that was the principle that I was talking about with listening, that so much of our world, and Nancy talked about how right now we're almost all over communicating. I mean, maybe not all of us in the screen here, but when we look at the media, you know, there's a funny little irony. Some people know that back in January, I planned to release a new book, a free book, Spiritual Experience, and then an audio collection to go with it. And then the timing was that it came out like, I don't know, what was it, like in April, I think? And by then, I mean, it was almost meaningless. Like, it was almost impossible for anyone to hear that there was something new. I mean, even people who like what I do, because there was so much communication in the world. Every communicator was dumping books and audios and courses and classes. And so, you know, I think to Nancy's point, I think the world is exemplifying what happens when we over communicate. And we can do that with each other. Too many texts, too many emails, too many calls. And the beauty of the social distancing experience is that we can become more purposeful with who we communicate with and how much, and start simplifying it a little bit and just let ourselves communicate more richly with those people that are more important or more precious. Moving on, we still have a little more time. Judy talked about communicating with her father and the significance of communicating with people who've passed. And I really think that when we are in this moment of social distancing, and if you're in isolation, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful time to remember that we are never alone. That you can wake up each day and invite the world of spirit, loved ones that have passed on, ancestors, angels, those that guide us, to be with us. When we look at the teachings of our great, whatever you want to call them, masters, elders, sages, many, many, many of them have passed on in writing and through oral tradition, the reality that when we are alone, we are most connected because we are not blinded by the illusion of 3 people in the room, 8 people on a call. Instead, in solitude, we have the power, we have the opportunity to remember that we are actually in dialogue and communication with all of life and all that guides us all the time. And so, in some ways, we are most connected to those that have passed on and those that guide us. But it makes a difference to be intentional about it. And I really do believe in ceremony, communicating with those that we love and have moved on, offering food, offering a candle, and telling them this is for you, inviting them to be with you during the day, inviting them to communicate with you in some way that you can understand. And that might be through coincidence or synchronicity. And that might also just be through sudden thoughts and feelings. But to remember that no one is alone, and in nothing we do are we ever as isolated as we think. We actually did cover a lot of these other things. That's interesting. So 2 things that remain on my list here are context and presence. The thing about context, I guess, brings us back to that idea I was sharing about being aware of your intention. Is this more like a physical thing, an accountability thing? Is this just sharing ideas and exploring? Is this just emotional connection or playfulness? Is this something that is more spiritual? So not only can we become more conscientious about our purpose when we speak, why we're speaking, and what we're really hoping to achieve, but the same opposite is important as well, which is that a lot of communication breaks down because of the emotional triggers. How someone said something, what they said, when they said it, why they said it. And being able to step back, create space, listen, and listen beyond what's being said, how it's being said, into the bigger story is probably one of the real master gifts of communication. It's my sense that most of the time, unless it's in that physical domain, like just communicating facts, we need more peanut butter. That's my favorite example. Most of the time, what people are communicating is not at all about the words coming out. They're communicating they want power. They're communicating they want to be right. They're communicating they want to be validated. They're communicating they want to be loved. They're communicating that they want to know that you hear them. And when you start getting into all the deep, but you said, and well, what you meant, and well, why did you use that word? You know, it's really difficult. And I'm certainly not blaming anyone for doing that. We all do it. But I think the principle I'm trying to conclude with is when you can create enough space and listen deeply, then what happens is you can listen into the story behind who or what you're communicating with. And as you understand their context, what they've been through, how they've lived, how they've suffered, their culture, their gender, their age, then you realize that what you're listening to is really this incredible symphony of life. It's not the single instrument of their voice, the single instrument of their words. It's not the single instrument of the moment. It's a symphony of all their forces and factors presenting itself to you. And it's hard. It's hard. We have to slow down, take a breath, not take it personally, so that we can feel the vastness that their communication arises from. So, it was amazing to see everyone here. It was a bit of an experiment. I'm sorry that it was a little bit clunky and I'm going to leave abruptly, but I want to thank you all because this was cool. This was really cool. Next week, we'll try it again, but we'll warn people more in advance. And even though I might be a minute late for my next thing, we're all going to go over to Facebook, Jonathan Ellerby, PhD. But I want to share a brief Rumi poem to close. And it's really about this final principle of opening your heart and mind to let communication be something more spacious, and to let every episode of communication be not just your interaction with one person, but your communication with life itself. So let's take a breath. And take Rumi's reminder. The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going to go back and forth. Don't go back to sleep. Across the door sill, where the two worlds touch, the door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. So thank you, one and all, seen and unseen. I love you, and we'll do this again.